All right, during the Exchange Server class, the final week of November 2017, I did not have the opportunity to demonstrate a multi-site failover scenario because it took too long to install the Exchange Server in the cloud. I had Exchange Servers 4, 5, and 6 that I had built, but I was curious to see what would happen if I did not have enough memory in the virtual machines to meet the minimum recommended requirements, and it turns out they installed themselves properly, but they would not run, and even adding enough memory to the servers later on did not get them to run. So I built another server, a 7th server. If I refresh my screen, I believe I'll see that there's a healthy 7th server here. The mailbox database that was created on that server, I will rename mailbox database 7. And before I get into watching the database failover happen, I'll clean up this Active Directory in case you're curious to know what do you do if you're in this kind of situation where somebody has begun an Exchange Server installation, it failed, you've got all this residue in the Active Directory. There's a tool called Active Directory Sites and Services that you can use, or ADSI Edit. Let's use ADSI Edit. Either ADSI Edit or Active Directory Sites and Services allows you to look at the configuration partition. I'm curious to see why this is not bringing up a result. Let's just do Active Directory Sites and Services. So dssite.msc will bring up Active Directory Sites and Services, and I can make sure that I am viewing the Services node by going to the View menu. Here in Active Directory Sites and Services, I see just sites to begin with, but the tool is called Active Directory Sites and Services, and it is possible to click on the very, very top, go to the View mode, and say Show Services node. That's not something that's available in the View mode unless you click on the very, very top. It's kind of hard to find. But once you find it, you'll be able to look at the sites and services, and the services include Microsoft Exchange Server. When you explode that out, you get your Exchange organization object, and then administrative groups followed by Exchange administrative group, and then the names of your servers. All you have to do is get rid of the bad servers by deleting them, and then take care of the databases that were stored on those servers. And there won't be any residue left of the failed installations. So I have some databases that are stored in my data center in my garage. I've got some databases, one database that is stored in the server in Amazon Web Services, and that's all the residue that's left in Active Directory Sites and Services. So when I go to my administration console and refresh the screen, I only have the databases that are actually healthy, and the list of servers likewise will be restricted down to just the servers that actually exist. So the server number 7 is the one that exists up in the cloud. It's a healthy server, and what I'm going to do is add this server to a database availability group. In the demos that I performed on Friday of the class, I created a database availability group with 3 servers in it, and what I want to do is add a 4th server to it now. So hit the plus sign, find, oops, that plus was going to create a new DAG. I want to hit the little gear icon in order to change how many servers are in the DAG that I had created. And all I have to do is add this server from the other data center into the DAG. Doing this is going to require a restart of the existing servers. You can't add a 2013 or 16 server to a DAG without doing a restart of the servers that are in the DAG. You can only have 2013 servers in a DAG or 2016 servers in a DAG. You can't have both in the same DAG. So all these are 2016 servers. This should work just fine. And once this server has joined the DAG, you want to do a reboot of all the servers. That will allow a background process called the Windows Fabric to establish the quorum that's running in the DAG. I want to run a PowerShell commandlet on just any one of the servers. This Bastion machine will work just fine. I want to get a Exchange Management Shell up, and I want to convert the DAG so that it's running in what's called Data Center Activation Coordination mode, DAC mode. There is a PowerShell command that I can run. If you go to dd979790, you'll see the syntax for setting up data center activation coordination mode. If you have a WAN link separating servers that are in a DAG, you definitely want to run this mode. We talked about why that was in the class. The reason is because you might someday have a situation where one data center has gone down, the other data center has too few servers to establish quorum, and so what you have to do is go to those servers and evict the dead servers from the DAG temporarily. That will allow the other servers to establish quorum even though they're a minority of the servers. And you want to make sure that the servers in the larger data center that have been dead for a couple days perhaps, when they power back up, you don't want them to mount their databases. Data center activation coordination mode ensures that servers that potentially have been evicted from a different location won't mount their databases until they hear from the other data center that the coast is clear and they're able to mount. So I'm going to paste in this commandlet. My DAG is called DAG1, not DAG2. Apart from that, everything is perfect with the syntax of what I want to run here. Oh, apparently not. Let's see. Following Windows servers are not in Active Directory. That's curious. Alright, so apparently it just hasn't finished the operation yet. I jumped the gun a little bit. I was hoping to be able to change the mode of the DAG while this installation was going on, but it wants to complete it, so we'll just let that run for a while. Let's talk for a second about client access while that's going on. I'm going to come to a browser window where I've got my DNS up. Up until this point, I've had a single name called CNAME that pointed to the IP address of my data center in my garage, but I'm about to have another server that will be able to respond to clients, and it's going to be in a totally different data center, has a totally different IP address. It's this one right here. My EX4, 5, and 6 are dead. I might as well delete those records, but all the other records that I've got, the other records that I got will be doing just fine staying there, so I'm going to delete the EX4, EX5, EX6, and leave the EX7 there. I've got an individual public IP address that was routing to each of the potential Exchange servers up in the cloud, and now that 3 of them are dead, I'm going to get rid of the residue in my DNS, but I'm going to leave this public live IP address in my DNS to point to the one remaining Exchange server up there, and I've got the IP address pointing to the public live IP address for my garage. The name webmail, I want to point to both of those two, and so what I'm going to do is delete the CNAME record and add 2 A records for webmail. You can't have 2 CNAME records for the same name and expect for DNS round robin to swap between the 2 of them. You need to have A records if you want DNS round robin to offer 2 different names, one name with 2 different IP addresses. You have to do that with A records, not with CNAME records. So I'm going to say that webmail.gkaws.com is going to point to 2 different IP addresses. One of them is the IP address in my garage. I'm going to have the time to live be as short as possible. GoDaddy allows me to be as little as 600 seconds, that's 10 minutes. And then I'm going to add another record to say another A record is also webmail, and it's going to point to the EX7 IP address. What's going to happen now is clients throughout the world who make a request for webmail.gkaws.com, all the web browsers, Outlook clients, mobile devices are going to get 2 answers to the question, what is webmail.gkaws.com? Oh, I want to change the time to live on this one to 600 as well. So for 600 seconds, it's 10 minutes, the clients that make a request to find out what that name is are going to get both IP addresses. Thanks to the wonder of DNS round robin, half of the clients will attempt to contact one of the IP addresses, half will attempt to contact the other IP address. If one of the data centers is down, after a short timeout, 30 seconds or less, depends on the client software, there will be an attempt to connect to the other data center. So the users will not experience much of an outage if the if one data center goes down, all the clients will just automatically connect to the other data center. So that is taken care of. I can now take a look at my installation process. I see that EX7 is still joining the cluster. It's curious that it's taking this long. I hope there's not some sort of error with the DAG. I've been very snake bitten by my attempts this week to incorporate everything in the cloud into my activities. When you choose a virtual machine in the cloud, you have a lot of different hardware levels to choose from, and you pay based on the hardware level. So I was attempting to weigh the fact that I need certain resources in order to run an Exchange server with what the cost was going to be, and I thought I've come up with some good blends of features versus price, but now I'm wondering if that server EX7 is really going to be able to cut the mustard with what I'm asking it to do. Anyway, it will give me feedback here, I suppose, before too long. So let's talk about what's going to happen once I get this server to have joined the DAG. I'm going to turn it into Data Center Activation Coordination mode, which means that the servers in the DAG, when they boot, are always going to try to find some other server to find out if they're in a healthy state or not. If any server boots and discovers another server in a healthy state, it's going to put a 1 into the registry and just go ahead and mount its databases. If, however, a server boots up and can't contact any other servers, it's going to put a bit in the registry with a value of 0 and dismount all of its databases. Any other machines that boot up in the same data center will have a network connection established to it, find that it's got a 0 in its registry, and they'll all put a 0 in their registry and also refuse to mount their databases. This has nothing to do with quorum. Quorum is a totally different safeguard to keep the servers from having split brain from two different servers mounting the same database. This idea of DAC is a completely different safeguard to keep servers from mounting their databases. This is even when quorum is established. Servers will not mount their databases if the first server that boots up in a data center can't find a friend to talk to. It panics, puts a 0 in its registry, and just doesn't mount its databases, tells all the other servers that boot up in the data center that they likewise should have a 0 in the registry and not mount their databases. And this ensures that if you have a bunch of machines boot up in a data center and only after they boot is a WAN link established to other data centers, if any servers were evicted from the DAG while they were down, some other data center had an activity where an administrator had specified that these servers are evicted from the DAG, we didn't want them to mount their databases upon reboot then, and this ensures that they will not mount their databases. Anytime you have a WAN link separating servers in a DAG, you want to make sure you run in Data Center Activation Coordination mode. So I'm going to go back again and run this PowerShell commandlet to convert my data center, not the data center, but both data centers, convert the DAG into Data Center Activation Coordination mode. Then I'm going to do a switchover. I'm going to kill the services in my garage, leaving only that EX7 server in the other data center. Of course, quorum will not be established at that point. That data center is going to have just one server in it in a 4-server DAG, and it's going to be forced to dismount its databases. And so what I need to do is go to the EX7 machine, and since the DAG will be in DAC mode, I'll have to run these steps in order to allow the server to mount its databases. Notice that if you're not in DAC mode, you have to go and do the net stop cluster service, start the cluster service with force quorum, and then evict these other servers from the DAG. If you are running Data Center Activation Coordination mode, then you know that the other servers are not going to be mounting their databases during the outage, so you can cavalierly mount the databases on EX7 in our case. But just with the PowerShell commandlets they indicate here, there's no need to do a forced eviction of the other servers because we know that they're not going to be mounting their databases as they boot up anyway. So it's a little bit simpler to do the switchover when you're running in data center activation coordination mode. It is absolutely recommended you always run in that mode anytime you have a WAN link separating your servers in a DAG. So it's telling me the operation failed from incorrectly configured static IP addresses. And it's telling me that the timeout period expired. I'm doing some weird magic with my IP that is certainly something that I've never done before. The servers can only interact with each other in a fairly peculiar way. Servers in my garage can only contact the servers in the cloud by using the public IP address that I have not yet added to my internal DNS. So I'm coming to my domain controller. I have a configuration going on for the networking that you would never see in the real world. And you see here that the EX7 machine has these two IP addresses that it's registered. Neither one of these is accessible from my garage. The 10.1 and the 172.31 are two IP addresses that are used by the EX7 machine, but neither one of those IP addresses can be accessed by the machines in my garage, so I need to go in and change the adapter properties to say don't bother registering that address in DNS. It's not an address that's going to be able to be used by any of the servers. And then same thing for the VPN connection. When an IP4 address is acquired through the VPN connection, there's no need to register that one as well. I want for the VPN connection to be disconnected rather, and then I will restart that VPN connection. So this EX7 machine can route to my garage via that VPN connection, which is 10.1 addresses that are slapped onto it. I'm trying to think if I need a 10.1 address. No, it'll be fine. If I refresh this screen, Active Directory replication has not yet commenced. These EX7 addresses will be removed automatically once Active Directory replication occurs. But I don't need to wait for that. I'm going to delete these two addresses now. Again, the magic that I've got going on in my networking is just utterly bizarre. I only am allowed to have TCP and UDP come in from the outside world to my garage. I can't have Protocol 47 or Protocol 50, so the number of VPN options that I had was very limited. I could only have an SSTP connection. That connection comes in from the outside world over port 443 to my external firewall. Just to show you the configuration of that, my external firewall is this AT&T router. When I look at the firewall settings, I'm taking all the traffic in from port 443 and sending it to this 101 machine. That is a forefront threat management gateway machine that's been deprecated for years, but it still works. I've got a machine sitting there taking in the port 443 traffic. Some of it is SSTP traffic, some of it is HTTPS traffic, and the forefront threat management gateway machine that I've got splits off the traffic, sends some of it over port 442 to the internal firewall. That's this 1.2 machine. That's the HTTPS traffic comes into the machine that I call NAT over port 442. The SFTP traffic comes in over port 443, and then the 442 traffic needs to be converted again back to port 443 so that when it's forwarded to the .21 machine, that's EX1, it is port number 443 again. So it's really weird what I've got going on. The SSTP traffic is coming in my external firewall, being forwarded to the TMG machine, then being forwarded to the NAT server, which is my VPN server, and that NAT/VPN server is going to answer the SSTP virtual private network request and that's all over port 443. Meanwhile, the HTTPS traffic coming from the outside world is going through the external firewall, hitting my TMG machine, and then being converted to port 442 instead of staying port 443. Looking at the Exchange server traffic, I see that the bridging rule I've got says to bridge to port 442, being forwarded to the 1.2 machine, the same machine that's getting the port 443 traffic and responding to SSTP, Secure Sockets Tunneling Protocol. That same machine is fetching 442 requests and converting them to 443 and sending them on their way. That's how traffic gets from the Amazon Web Services data center to my data center is through SSTP, with that VPN getting as far as the NAT server, and the NAT server gives it IP addresses on the 10. Network. Traffic going in the other direction is using public live IP addresses to get to the outside world. Here's these DC2. You notice that, well, apparently not. I was thinking that I had a public live IP address registered in this DNS list, and I don't, so I'm not exactly sure why, but that is, I thought, the way that I had everything configured. And it was 4 o'clock in the morning when I configured my networking and finally got the Active Directory replication to work, so whatever it's doing now, I'm not going to mess with it. But machines can't connect right now from where they are to the Exchange server in the cloud, that EX7 machine. If I were to try to ping EX7, it wouldn't work. But if I go to my DNS and I say I want to create a new host record for EX7 with that public live IP address, I don't have any firewalls running protecting those servers in Amazon Web Services. It's completely wide open. You would never do that in the real world, but I don't care about security in this demo, so I have this public live IP address completely open for anybody that wants to send any traffic to it. Therefore, everybody on my internal network can actually use the public live IP address to get to the server. I thought I copied that to my clipboard. Apparently not. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was in the virtual machine console. I had to paste it that way. All right, so I created a record that should allow EX7 to be contacted. Because I had a negative response a moment ago that there was no such host as EX7, it still thinks that there is no such host. I have to say ipconfig/flushdns to forget the negative response that I got a moment ago, and now I do have the ability to ping EX7 and connect to it in every other way. So that is a perfectly valid explanation why my attempt to add EX7 to the DAG failed. If you can't contact EX7, you're not going to be able to tell that it's in the DAG. So that took a whole lot longer than I would have expected and eventually failed. I didn't realize the entire time that no packets were actually making it to EX7. It's possible that this portal might be still failing to get to EX7 because of a negative response in the DNS, and I'm going to close down the utility, open it back up again, and hope that the next time it'll be able to connect. I want to open up a command prompt and say ping EX7, see if I have connectivity. So that looks good. I'm able to contact the other Exchange server. I'll say that I want to get back to the ECP virtual directory. That's the Exchange admin center. Go back to the list of servers. On the servers node, I'm able to look at the database availability groups tab, look at the gear icon that allows me to add servers to the DAG, find EX7, Try to add EX7 to the DAG once again and see if it gets any farther. Hopefully it was just a DNS issue that was preventing everything from working earlier. And if this doesn't work, I think I'll... well, it didn't work. So the Exchange Replication Service does not appear to be running. That is a different error. Let me bring up the EX7 machine. I'm encouraged at least that it got a different error. Let me bring up a couple of things on this EX7. I want to bring up the list of services just in case there was some sort of hang upon boot. Taking a look at the list of services coming down. Going to sort by startup type to put all the automatically running services towards the top, and I see that there are a couple of Exchange services that are not running. The Unified Messaging services should not be running. I have not yet installed a certificate that would allow them to run. All the other services seem to be running just fine, including the replication service. So let me bring up a web browser and see if I can connect to the Exchange Admin Center here. So this is EX7. Oh, I don't have a certificate for this thing yet. I just built this machine. I don't yet have a certificate for it. So if I go https:// EX7 /ECP, there is a self-signed certificate that has been generated for this server. While it was being built, it generated a certificate for itself saying, I promise that I am who I say I am. Apparently, it still has the Internet Explorer Enhanced Security configuration enabled. Let me turn that off. I thought I'd taken care of this, but we'll go ahead. Yeah, it said it was off, but clearly it was giving Internet Explorer Enhanced Security configuration pop-ups, so turning it back on and off again usually solves that problem. Let me close down IE, bring it back up. Come on, darling. I'll bring it back up again and go to, again, that EX7/ECP. This server requires the domain name to be typed in, which is GKAWS/administrator, followed by a password of just a lowercase a. And the first thing I want to do is give this guy a viable certificate. Nobody in the outside world is going to be able to have this server service it unless I've got a viable certificate other than a self-signed one. So I'm going to come in to EX7. I want to have a certificate that includes the name Autodiscover and includes the name Webmail. Network path to the registry is not found. That's a little bizarre. Oh, it wants a product key. Look at that. I have not typed in my product key. That's another reason why some things might have been stripped down on this. Let me go ahead and grab the product key and paste it in here. Give me just a moment. I don't suppose that it would be kind enough to allow me just to do a full paste. No, there's no chance. Alright, so I'll have to paste 5 characters at a time. And there we go. Alright, so now I get to come on back in and take a look at the server. It should be fully functional. I can now come to the list of certificates. I've created quite a few certificates. When I was doing some testing a few days ago, there was the need to keep on trying several things. So I'm going to create a new certificate. Type in the name of the certificate. This is the EX7 cert. I'm not going to have a wildcard certificate. I'm going to store the request on this server where I'm sitting. I am going to take a look at all these services. You click on next through there, get rid of the one that mentions the machine by its single field name. Have the name webmail be the default name. So I'm sorry, webmail.gkaws.com. I'll have to have a couple other names as well. There is the name webmail that I'm going to have be the default name. That's the one in bold. I'm going to take the EX1 and EX2 and EX3 machines and add them to the cert. I'll be able to use this one cert for all the servers if the need arises. Also, if I need to do any sort of reverse proxying and want to contact any of the machines from the outside world, I'll be able to do that if this certificate gets loaded up onto the reverse proxy. So I'm mentioning every individual server by name in this cert. I'm mentioning the webmail, the GKAWS. In the real world, it's not necessary to expose your real server names in the certificate, but in testing and demos, I can make some things flow through a little bit more smoothly than it otherwise would. Mail.gkaws.com I'm going to add as well. I'm not planning on doing any secure email flow, but just in case I do want to have mutual TLS added anywhere, I'll go ahead and include that name. So I believe that's all the names that I need for my cert. I'm always a little hesitant to click on next there. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at what the cert was on my EX1, view the certificate, make sure that all the names that I added to my old servers are included here. So I've got the EX1, EX2, EX3. I have the name VPN also. I put the same certificate onto the reverse proxy in my VPN server, and I'll go ahead and add that as well. Oh, and EX Bastion, forgot about that one. So those are all my Exchange servers. I'm going to add the EX Bastion and the VPN to this certificate so that I can use this one certificate for anything I darn well please. In the real world, I would want to restrict the number of certificate names to save money on the price of the certificate, but in testing, just to get the darn thing to work, I frequently will use a whole lot of names just to get things to work, and then I'll start removing names, installing different certificates with fewer names, find out which ones removals are going to break what, and that allows me to strip things down to the smallest possible common denominator, and I know what I need to build for the customer that I'm mimicking. I was like, if I have the opportunity to build the same kind of environment that I'm about to build for a customer and make sure that I know exactly which names are going to meet their needs. So I'm in the mode here where I'm just trying to get the darn thing to work. I'm including as many names as I can in the certificate, and if I wanted to mirror a customer's environment, I would start stripping down names and find out what breaks when I do. So here is, again, a certificate where you're typing in where you're living. You can lie to it, things are still going to work, but it's a good idea to keep things on the up and up so that users who see the information are not going to freak out and think that it's a fake server they're talking to. Alright, so on the root directory of drive C for this EX7 machine, I'm going to create a file called cert request and finish this up. Now on the hard drive, I've got a file that I can open up in Notepad. Apparently I don't. This is on EX7. Where the heck did I create that? I thought that I'd created this. Oh, did I? No. I really thought that I had created the file here on this location. Oh, I'm sitting here looking at the very top item in the list. It is this. Do I have to refresh the screen? Oh, it's on server Bastion. Sorry. I didn't see the certificate that I had just made the request for because I was looking at the wrong server. If I look at the EX7 server, then I'll see the certificate request that I just made. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. This is bizarre. I went through the wizard, and I had this EX Bastion highlighted when I did, which I should have highlighted the EX7, and I'm not seeing the cert that I just made the request for. Let me do it again. I was talking and typing so much that I wasn't really watching what I was doing. Can't even connect to the remote procedure call service. This is really bizarre. I'm sitting at the EX7 machine, trying to connect to the EX7 machine. I see that all the services are running, and yet it is not able to connect. The services that are set to automatic that are not running are ones that are expected to not be running, so there's nothing special going on there. I'm going to restart the server because I'm kind of at a loss for what the proper course of action ought to be here. And then just make the attempt to reconnect once it's had the opportunity. Looking at my EC2 portal in my Amazon Web Services, this is the Elastic Cloud Compute dashboard. I can see my instances include this one that is restarting, the T2 large instance that has 8 gig of memory. Just went through a restart request, and before long it will allow me to reconnect. And when I reconnect, I want to go ahead and try to connect to the Exchange Admin Center. After the reboot, it will have killed its VPN session that I had running during the last desktop session. If I really wanted to smooth up the network connectivity, I should install a service. I should convert the VPN client to a service and run the VPN client as it boots. That way, upon boot, this machine would have a VPN session to the home office, to my garage environment. I'm just wondering if that's the nature of the problem, just the fact that this machine connects to the garage environment over a VPN where it gets a 10.1 IP address on its adapter. Meanwhile, this machine has also got a 172.31 address that it uses for local communications in its data center, and there's a public live IP address that maps to that 172.31 address. The servers in my garage have to use the public live IP address in order to hit this server. It's certainly a network configuration that I have never envisioned before, and it seemed to be giving me good results 24 hours ago with everything that I tried to do, but the configuration of the DAG is a lot more robust than any of the simple file and print sharing tests that I did, so maybe what I have in mind here is just not possible. I'm going to open up the Exchange server, try once again to connect to the EX7 ECP virtual directory. That's the Exchange Admin Center. Going to head on down to the servers list, go to the list of certificates. This time I'm going to take a look at the EX7 machine instead of the EX Bastion. And it's still telling me that it can't connect to the remote procedure call service. Let's see what this guy has to say about the IP address. It may be that I need to use a hosts file to convince this machine how to connect to its own IP address. Let's bring up a command prompt and do an ipconfig. We'll just do a ping of ex7. See how this guy translated its own IP address. It's using IP6, which should be fine. It's certainly getting a reply. There's no reason why this machine should not be able to contact itself based on what I'm seeing there. But let's add a record to the host file anyway, in case your DNS is ever doing ugly things for you because dynamic registrations are giving addresses that can't be reached from certain data centers. You can always just go into the System32 drivers etc folder and add a hosts record. You notice that the VPN, I've already done this to be able to VPN. I'm not relying on any DNS telling this server how to get to the VPN server because different places in the world are going to require a different IP address to connect to that VPN. So that is what I've done there. I'm trying to remember the IP address of this server. It's 172.31.32 followed by 27. That's the IP address of this machine, which is ex7.gkaws.com. I just want to make sure that this guy doesn't get some sort of 10.1 IP address for itself when it attempts to contact itself. I just really don't understand why this ex7 would not have been able to contact its own services. The services have clearly said that they were running. Verify the valid computer name was used. Yeah, and the Microsoft Exchange service host service is started. Did I see that one on the list? Going to the administrative tools, services, sort by startup type. Well, actually, let's not even sort by startup type because they specifically wanted the Microsoft Exchange service host serviced, and if for some reason that one was set to manual, I would have the root of the problem. But nope, it's set to automatic and it is running, and it cannot be contacted for a reason that I can't explain. Let's take this error message and Google it and see if there is any insight that somebody else offers. And this is the error message that I got. It's telling me that there is something to do with certificates. Somebody was using the Exchange Management Console back then. And they're talking about firewall rules. That's not good because that means that there's some sort of problem with the network. I don't believe I have any firewalls being enforced by this machine. Maybe I do if I'd forgotten to unleash the firewall. That could be the root of what my problem is here. So let's take a look at the firewall settings, see if I remembered to unleash it. Yeah, I've got the firewall turned on for the domain network. Well, that could be getting in the way of some stuff, so let's see if that's going to help. No. Well, if I can't connect to this server, we're not going to get very far. One thing that I can do is make a certificate request, create a certificate, and export the certificate from a different machine and import it on this one. I still am trying to figure out what happened with the certificate request that I made at the beginning of this little segment. I requested a certificate for EX7 and I don't see that certificate able to be completed on any of those windows. So let's go ahead and just take my EX Bastion machine, put a certificate request onto the hard drive of EX Bastion right there in that root directory of drive C. And then I'll export it from here and import it into EX7. All right, so name for the certificate is another cert to be exported to EX7. The certificate will be stored on the machine named EX Bastion, since the EX7 machine. Did I put it on EX1? It seems like I just kind of was in cruise control, and I think I put it on EX1. If that's the case, I don't get why I wouldn't be able to complete the request. Here in the root directory of drive C, I should have a cert request. Nope. I don't know where I put that darn thing. Somewhere I put a file, and I can't find the darn thing, so we will just go ahead and complete the wizard. Here on EX Bastion's hard drive, on EX Bastion's list of certificates, I'm going to have this one that will be able to be exported and then imported into the EX7 machine. So I'm going to have the EX7.gkaws.com. I'm also going to add the EX1 and EX2 and EX3, just in case I, for some reason down the road, need to export the certificate and install it on all of my machines. I get in this habit because so many times I've created certificates and then realized I needed that certificate on another server. So I just got in the habit now of however many servers I've got, I go ahead and add every one of their names to the certificate so that I'm not missing any when the time comes to export it somewhere that it might be needed. That VPN name is going to be included. That name called mail is going to be included. I'm not going to need the name with no DNS suffix, so I'll get rid of that. But all the names with DNS suffixes I've now got represented. The webmail is the default name. Organization is GKAWS. Department name is IT. Locality is Austin. The file will be stored on EX-Bastion root directory of drive C, and this is tryagain.cer. Alright. I should see now a file called tryagain that comes to life, and I'm sorry, I wanted REQ, not CER. This is a text file that I need to open with Notepad. So here's the certificate request. Copy this stuff to the clipboard, open up a web browser, navigate to my certificate authority, which is the name DC. The domain controller has a virtual directory called certserv that I'm going to navigate to. Say I want to request a certificate with an advanced request using a form, and paste that nonsense in there, choose a web server certificate, download the certificate, put it on my hard drive, and find out where it actually went. It went in the downloads folder. Sounds good. So I can come back to my browser window where I have this other cert that needs to be exported. I'm going to complete the request by pointing it to that //ex-bastion /C $, and I'll just go ahead and move that file. I'll just call it done.cer. Take that file that was downloaded, rename it done, put it in the root directory of drive C, put it in the root directory of drive C, there we go, and then I can come back to my browser window. There was a little window open above that, and finish my little wizard. Okay, so now the certificate exists in the registry of EX-Bastion. I was hoping that it would exist in the registry of the EX7 machines, so I need to come in and run a utility called the mmc.exe, get the certificates snap in to come to life, look in the portion of the registry that stays resident for the life of the boot, not one that just stays in when somebody's logged in. Take the personal certificate that I just created. Where's today's date? There it is. And if I do a all tasks export, I can export the private key that makes it usable on a different machine, export all the extended properties, say that I have a password of a letter A, give a file name of ex7cert.pfx. I think it would have added that extension anyway, but we'll go ahead and add it. Now I can come to my other server, EX7. I can go to the MMC on it, add the snap-in called certificates, look at the portion of the registry that stays resident for the life of the boot. Look at the personal certificates, of which it has a self-signed certificate, and then it has a certificate that's been signed by one of its own services. I'm going to add a certificate by importing it that is on the root directory of EX-Bastion's hard disk. So // ex-bastion. See, $sign is going to have a file in it with a PFS extension. I'm going over a VPN to get to the server, but it is not connecting. That's interesting. I should have full connectivity to exbastion.gkaws.com. I shouldn't have to add that DNS suffix, but I did. Why would I have to add that DNS suffix? Interesting. Okay. All right. Whatever the case, that may be somehow related to my problem. There's a PFX file is what I'm looking for here, this ex7cert.pfx. Trying to rack my brain and figure out what is going on with my networking that wouldn't make the name resolution possible at that level, but whatever the case. The installation of that certificate has now happened. I can therefore go to the IIS services and associate that certificate with IIS. It is still not going to allow me, at least I haven't changed anything, so I'd be shocked if it let me do something in this tool that it didn't let me do before. I'm going to close that browser window, open up IIS, and take a look at my default website, see the bindings for it, change the port 443 certificate to use another cert to be exported to EX7 instead of the default certificate that it had been using. So now I've got a new certificate. I need to use the full name of the server, not just EX7, so ex7.gkaws.com/ECP. Group policy should have long since educated this server to trust all the certificates that are generated by that certificate authority. So if I get a certificate error message here, then it's indicative of some problems. Computer's low on memory. Could that be the reason that I'm having the issues that I'm having? I've got 8 gig of memory on this machine. I've got Exchange services and that's it. I mean, there's a couple browser windows. There's not a lot of reason I can think of why I'd be running out of memory on an 8 gig memory server. So that's possibly causing all of the issues that I'm running up against. And it is possible in AWS to reconfigure a server, shut it down, and then change the server type to one that has more memory. But I'd just be chasing my tail at that point, trying to just throw darts at a dartboard and figure out what's sticking at that point. So I've got a theory that it may be low on memory being the reason that it's not able to respond. This is a different error message now. This is not the error message I was getting before. Accessing the registry on EX7 is a path not found. And when it's talking about paths, I mean, I think we're looking at a memory problem here. Anyway, looking at the certificates is where I was before. Let's see if it's giving me the same error message that it gave me last time, or a different one. Remote procedure call service. So that's the same error message I was getting before. The fact that it told me I was out of memory is definitely disconcerting. It's not supposed to happen on a machine with 8 gig and nothing else going on it. So I think we've just hit an impasse here where there's something to do with the configuration that I've got. Lack of memory is not what I was expecting. I thought there might be something objectionable in the way that I configured my networking. The fact that all the network sessions that go from my garage to the cloud are using public live IP addresses to get there, whereas every session that's established from the cloud back to my garage is going through a VPN. That is peculiar. I've never configured anything like that before. And now it's just not even responding to clicks. So I don't think that we're going to be able to get this other server to be added to the DAG after all. So I apologize for the demo that I've been promising all week long, that we won't be able to cross the finish line with it all. Certainly gave it the old college try. I was up till 4 in the morning a couple of nights, mainly getting the networking to come to life, and then we just had to wait till the cows came home for the installation to happen, and now lo and behold, that the installation has happened, it looks like it's in a state that is just not going to respond. So my brainchild for getting this little demo to come to life was clearly flawed from the start. In the future, if I ever want to make a demo like this, I need to use the networking tools that AWS gives me. I was attempting to circumvent those rules as a way of trying to come up with a free solution when in fact they usually charge about $1, $1.50 a day. My goal there was not just to save a few bucks. I was hoping to give you guys a cookbook to be able to do the same thing and come up with a free solution, but that is long since a memory. There is no free way to get this kind of demo to happen. You're going to be paying for the resources in the cloud that you're going to use if you want to make that alternate data center come to life in the cloud. So unfortunately, we are at a standstill. This knowledge base article, this techno article rather, of 351049 is the Bible for failing over a data center, so that when one data center is down and you've lost quorum, you can activate the servers on the other data center. So feel free to read through that. That's what I would have done to these machines if I were able to get that other server to be entered into the DAG. So I hope you enjoyed the class. I wish that I would have been able to have a little bit more robust demos there, but I hope the examples that I did give and the scenarios that we talked about would have been enough for you to fill in the gaps. And as you have questions down the road, don't be shy about reaching out. I'd love to hear from you.